If one was to look up into the sky, into the wonders that the void might actually hold, one would at least hope that the sentient and sapient species out there would not try to kill each other. The probability of losing an entire population center or even an entire planet is far too high when dealing with entire fleets. Yet this threat of losing an entire planet doesn't really seem to bother over half the spacefaring species in the galaxy, as they look at it as well as just one planet out of several dozen? Many of these same species look at other fledgling species as sources, a source of knowledge, as each species thinks a different way, and they might be able to figure something out that this other species hasn't been able to figure out. They're also a source of resources, of course. Why send your own survey teams when you can just wait for this weaker species to find all the deposits for you, then go in and take it for yourself? And of course, they are a source of food, as once they reach a certain population, that is a whole lot of biomass that can be harvested, taken, preserved, and keep another species going for a long time. Those species that harvest these younger species wait until the younger ones have created FTL tech and it has reached beyond their cradle sector. This is to assure that they have enough sources for them to harvest without wasting their time. This was the case as one of the predatory species made plans to take the Sol sector again. They had originally broken the rules and stuck prematurely and lost almost all harvestable materials, as radiological weapons were used against the invaders when they went down to harvest entire populations. Unfortunately for those on the ground, these prototype weapons killed just as many on the surface of friendlies as it did of the enemy. This act of desperation and defiance made both the invading species withdraw away from the planet, as they did not want to lose any more, and it was no longer profitable. After word got back of this absolute debacle, all harvesting species wanted to see what was going on back on this planet, and they all saw the same thing, as massive governments that once controlled the entire population, the entire planet, simply collapsed across the globe and fell into chaos. As much as their population fell, it was as though the entire world had actually hit the reset button, as many were forced into small tribes around the world, seemingly to forget their technology. This is why these harvesting species left Earth and the Sol sector alone for such a long time. Most of these predatory species believed that humanity would never, ever grow back. Even if they had enough population, they would never, ever leave the planet. This is why it was such a surprise that eventually the automated alarms began to indicate that the Sol sector was ready for harvesting. Realizing this, many species salivated at the idea of getting more for themselves and less for everyone else. One species started by sending a large group of ships and started their invasion by attacking the colony outside the Sol sector. Yet what they found was difficult to deal with. The humans had dug themselves in like a tick, and this amphibious species, known as the Von Koof, lost 20 of their own for each human they captured or killed, and this even counted just catching 1 or 2 body parts of the humans. When the colony was finally secured, as they simply had to dig the colony out up around the humans themselves and rip it open, the survey groups were sent in to harvest the technology now that all the humans were gone. This started out fine until the entire colony suddenly exploded, and exploded in a molten fire from underneath. As it turned out, the explosive was set near a local magma chamber that ruptured and blew magma all over the area and caused said magma to turn into a giant lava tsunami that covered all ships on the ground and filled in the hole left from the explosion. And this would be their burial stone as it hardened around them. Seeing this only made the Von Koof want whatever the humans had more, and they immediately grabbed their remaining forces and headed towards Seoul. As they came in out at FTL, they saw that humanity had actually been very busy. They scanned out and saw many, many drones moving cargo from space stations and to and from planets. They looked at this technology and they all thought the same thing. This is going to be a great harvest. Many of the command of this armada coming in were already raising a toast and grateful that they had got there first, as they would be the only ones to be able to harvest Earth and humanity and get all their technology, all their resources, and all their biomass. And as they moved towards Earth, this harvesting fleet saw a group of human ships beginning to form and begin to approach them. A quick scan wasn't even needed. They realized what this was. It was a defensive fleet. Yet, they were clearly outnumbered by the Von Koost harvester fleet, at least 7-1. The Von Koost didn't read any large energy spikes and realized that there was no main energy cannons and thought, well, this should be easy. We'll simply go up, do our thing, and take over the ships. It's not going to be an issue. The Von Koost, believing their superiority, moved in close. Very close. So close that they were actually well within visual range. They did this because they wanted to disable the human ships and harvest its secrets. They did not want to destroy them. Not yet. The Von Koost began to open the ports and charge their main cannons and prepared the fire, all the while refusing to answer the hails coming from not only the human fleet, but from all the planets and planetoids around. They also began to scan the human ships to see what they were going to do. They realized the only thing they could pick up was a high-energy resonance from the human ships. Everyone believed that these primitive beings simply had engines that bled off far more energy than they should. Realizing this, the Von Koost decided to fire. Being so close, there's absolutely no chance that the humans can dodge. They knew it was coming. So the human ships maneuvered to show as little bit of the profile to the Von Koost as possible. The Von Koost command saw this and thought one thing. Aw, how cute. They think they can take our weapons. Or at least make us miss. The beams from the energy weapons strike within half a moment of them firing. The human ships flinch from the particle-based energy weapons that strike them. The beam itself ends up reflecting away from the human ships, and the Von Koost are suddenly standing there stunned as they see their beams go in and bounce off at 5, 10, 15, 20 degrees off center. How is this possible? The Von Koost, stunned, realized, oh, they figured out energy shields. The Von Koost command believed that this would be a little bit more difficult, but after they were able to recharge for another round, they would focus their beams even more, and energy shields or not, they'll be able to cut through the human ships. Yet they realized they couldn't keep firing until they were able to spin up enough energy again. Realizing they needed some time, the Von Koost command ordered all shields to be raised, yet only cruiser size and up had such shields. All the rest were expected to stay behind if there was any fighting, so shields were never installed. Continuing to scan the human vessels, everybody was shocked that the humans are able to adapt shielding to even the smallest vessels. The Von Koost commander salivated at harvesting this technology, and as his shields came up to 100%, he realized he simply had to handle the human beam weapons, and then they could come back with their tighter beams and survive. Not only survive, but win the fight. On board the flagship of Earth, the EDF Honey Badger, the Admiral yelled, "Status!" He then received words that all ships survived the initial volley, which made him grin just a little bit, but he knew this battle was not over. He turned forward, picking up his hat that had fallen off from the beam striking the ship and forcing him backwards. Putting it on his head, he said, "Well, since they didn't come to talk, obviously, signal the fleet. I want priority on their warships. Give me a time on target. "Time on target eye," is all he heard back. From the outside, everyone can see that the turrets began to rotate, torpedo tubes began to open, and the fixed cannons inside the hull of the ship began to spin up. Once he saw green across the board for the entire fleet, he simply said, "Fire." Moments later, he continued with, "Tell the fleet, fire at will." Aboard the Von Koof vessels, the first thing they saw was torpedoes being launched. They realized that these torpedoes were so close that it will be less than 20 seconds before impact. They all believed that the point defenses should take care of this, and if this is the primary offensive weapon of the humans, they shouldn't have any problems. But this thought was very fleeting, as then all the cannons from the human side fired their solid munitions simultaneously. The Von Koof had only a moment to realize what was about to happen. The solid projectiles are completely unaffected by energy shielding and can completely pierce clean through their ships. And at that range, you don't miss. The large projectiles from the cannon streaked right past the torpedoes, right through the shields, and cleared away as they struck not only the point defenses, but also made giant gaping holes in the ships for the torpedoes to go into. The torpedoes started exploding right in the Von Koof's face, right on their bridges, or they would penetrate the open maw left by the solid projectiles and erupt, blowing the front open as though they're putting an explosion in the back of their throats. Other torpedoes were programmed to detonate inside. They would penetrate deep into the guts before exploding, completely rearranging the guts inside the ship. The Von Koof vessels, still moving after this initial volley, tried desperately to run, many of them adjusting their heading and spinning up their FTL, but they were immediately targeted and splashed by all the human ships, which were now at point-blank range. In the end, the Von Koof fleet was completely annihilated, and the remnants were sitting there, floating in space, and that turns out they were harvested by the humans. Hello everybody, this is Syntax. Thank you for joining me today on this quick short story. Before I go, I need to send out a few thank yous to some of my supporters, and those will be Erica Gem, Guardian Sage, The Black Trapper, MTF Guard, Brian Kemp, SS Demon, and Chris Dixon. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I'll see you on the next one. This is Syntax, punching out.